So I don't know. Does anyone want to start off, or should I start off?
You
I'll let you,
close.
I'll let you do the honors.
I can start off if no one else wants to.
Yeah, you start.
You
You want to
should
start?
have what?
Did I hear you say that, Jonathan? All right. My name's Jamal. I have been coding for a while, but I'm just starting in Python. I've done some work in Ruby, C Sharp, and Visual Basic, and I just started up Python this year. I hadn't learned any languages in a while, and I hadn't really, like in the past few years, I kind of let my programming skills kind of get a little rusty. So picking up Python and learning it this year was kind of my way to get back on the um, programming
Horse or gun?
bandwagon horse. I don't know, whatever the proper um, saying is. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed Python, and not only learning a new language, but learning Python specifically. It's been a good. Um, it's very. It's powerful, and it has a lot of features and a lot of concepts that are more advanced. But the syntax is still pretty straightforward and easy to read, unlike some other languages. And it handles a lot of the so like Derek said with C, there's a lot of stuff that you have to think about in C that you don't have to think about in a language like Python. So I'm really enjoying it. So that's my background. I don't know who else to go next.
I'll go next.
Okay.
All right. I'm Jonathan. I started out coding in C++ while I was in college. I didn't go to college for computer science. I went for political science, but I was doing computer programming on the side just because I found it interesting. But then I kind of stopped for a while and uh, came across Python and started doing that this past year. I think in April I started messing around with Python, and then all the C++ stuff started coming back to me. But it's so much easier to do in Python. So much less code, and it's just everything straightforward, and everything makes sense. I think it was much easier to understand programming when I went and started doing Python than when I started out with C++. Understand the theory and the concepts. But yeah, haven't really been doing it too much. I only really started getting serious when I started doing Python in April. So, but
Oh.
that's my background.
All right. Who's next?
I guess I'll go. I have a background in math, and that sort of lends itself well to programming and needing to make a computer do the math that you want to do. And math people like to do it in C because it's fast, and so that's sort of the way I went. And since then, I've been expanding out of there. For work, I've had to program in VBA and Perl, and recently I found Python, and I think Python is probably my favorite language that I've come across so far. And still want to expand and try out some other things, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Awesome.
I'm Derek also, but everybody just calls me D. I've been doing Python about a year now. I started out with C++ and hated every single minute of it. But Python is just, I just like it a lot more. And like I said, it's been about a year, so off and on, but now I'm really starting to get back into it.
That's great.
Okay, so my background, actually, I haven't been coding overall that long. Initially, maybe I just started teaching myself just basic HTML, CSS. But then not that long ago, from mid-March to about June, I went to one of those boot camps for web development. So I did that full time for about 3 months, and they taught us a full stack. The back end part of it the portion was Ruby and Rails and Postgres. And the front stack, of course, was JavaScript. Actually, I use a little bit of Node.js and Express, but it was just, even though it was 3 months, it was like an advanced intermediate type learning experience because now I feel like I've been exposed to a lot of things, but I also don't have that much experience coding. And so anyway, after that, I just started looking for a job, and just recently I got hired as an entry level using Python Django, which I have to teach myself now. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. I I know a lot of people are looking for those types of jobs, getting in, doing something tangible with the language that they're interested in, or a language similar to what they're interested in. So that's great that you were able to find that.
Yeah, I was really relieved actually to not have to do JavaScript. I was like, sure, I'll learn a new language as long as it's not JavaScript. I didn't like it very much, especially after learning Ruby and then seeing something like Python. I prefer it.
Yeah, I could see that because another thing that has gotten me a couple times in Python over Ruby is, so in Ruby, the last statement, whatever's returned from the last statement, will automatically be the return value for a function. And it gets me sometimes that I actually have to type out return to return a value in Python.
Oh yeah.
And I think that kind of correlates to in JavaScript where you have, your closing curly brackets and your semicolons and stuff where you're just stating that you're finishing something out. And
Yeah, I
so,
think
yeah, I could see that.
most of my errors in JavaScript have always been due to something really dumb, like, oh, I forgot the semicolon somewhere in hundreds of lines of code. You know what I mean? And it's just so tedious to go back and find that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Oh, one quick question. So at work, I guess they decided to use the IDE called PyCharm,
Mhm.
and it's my first time using it. And at first, I was kind of hesitant because I've only used like regular text editors before, but it's actually kind of helpful because I guess it has like a built-in console and also debugger type thing. And I'm still trying to figure it out, but if
I use
any of
PyCharm.
you, oh, you did? If
Yeah.
any of you have like any advice or tips with that, that'd be great.
When you say a text editor, are you talking about Notepad or something like that?
Well, I use Atom for the most part. It's an open source. Um,
Is that sort of more like Vim or Emacs?
it's more like Sublime Text.
Okay. I I've heard of PyCharm before. I've never actually used it. Um,
I
but I
can
mean,
I can verify PyCharm is very nice.
I've seen it a couple times. I know that people have said good things about it. It's kind of like, so it's an IDE because it's got your text editor and you have your window where you can run your
Right.
software. It does some syntax completion, but it seems like it doesn't get in your way like some IDEs can, which
No,
is
it doesn't. It has all the basic features like the autocomplete, and it'll let you know where the error is. Like it can kind of guide you, like before you even try and like run your program. Um, it'll like show you where, okay, you need to go back to this line, and there's a built-in terminal. You can pip install like almost any package you want. It's almost already there for you. It'll let you know what you're missing. Um, and then also it'll let you work with the different, like you can tell specific projects which interpreter, like if you're using a 2.7, 2.6, or 3.4, 3.5,
that's nice.
you can have them all split up and say this specific project uses this specific interpreter.
That's nice. So it probably also keeps track of which modules you're using with which projects
Right.
and all that
Hmm.
stuff too.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, because you can split it up so that each individual project knows exactly which version, just like instead of like requirements text, you can do it specifically for the project.
Nice.
And then they also have a free version too. They have a free version and a paid version.
My personal opinion is that I jump around between languages enough
Hmm.
that I don't. I think I would have trouble going from, all right, I'm using something for my C code, and then I'm using something else for Python, and then I'm using something else for this language and something else for this language. So I picked something based on the fact that I want it to be universal, and I want to be able to use the same thing for everything.
Right.
Um,
Well, the good thing about PyCharm is you can do JavaScript, you can do HTML, you can do all the different. You can do CSS. You can do all those
okay.
different types of files within PyCharm.
That sounds
Right.
cool, and it also handles a lot of like just this past week. I had it set up so that my different projects could use different versions with virtual, what is it,
Virtual
virtual
environments.
environments. Yeah, and it had all that separated out, and it just stopped working on one of my laptops. So if PyCharm handles that for you,
It
uh,
does.
automatically, I could see that being really helpful.
It does. And then also the new version just came out Tuesday, PyCharm 5.0.
Yeah, you just reminded me I have to update that. Oh, and I sent a link because apparently the makers of, I guess it's JetBrains that they make PyCharm. They also have a lot of other IDEs for Ruby and other
They
types.
do RubyMine, IntelliJ for Java.
I've used
Uh,
ReSharper, which is theirs. That was a really awesome tool.
yeah, they make really good tools.
Now, one thing that like really confused me in the beginning when I first started installing Python and Django was the whole idea of a virtual environment. Maybe you guys can kind of explain that to me a little better, and maybe what's also I think it's called a virtual wrapper or something like that. And I haven't installed that, so I'm not really sure if it's necessary or it's just something that's nice to have. Or
Does someone want to take that one? Or
Um, I know about the virtual environments. I'm not sure about the wrapper. Um, from what I understand about the virtual environments is you don't want to mess up anything that's global on your computer. So you set up the virtual environment so that you can install the different packages and you won't have any conflicts with any other versions of similar software on your system. So if it messes up in the virtual environment, you won't mess up your system as a whole and then be just SOL. So that's
okay,
the purpose of the virtual environment to kind of protect your overall system while just working in that one on that one specific project.
yeah, it definitely does that. It also kind of solves the problem we were talking about a minute ago, where you might have a system that runs Python 2, but you want to run a project in Python 3 and keep track of which modules that you are using for that specific project. So it creates um, an instance, whatever instance you specify of Python, to be, and then kind of a unique space to be able to install your modules to, so that, like you said, you have your own kind of sandbox, so you don't mess up the rest of your system with that project. You can configure it in its own way.
so my question now is that if I wanted to use Python 3.5 on probably most of my projects from here on out, if I install it inside a virtual environment, would that mean that I need to reinstall it in every other virtual environment that I create?
For the actual Python, you're going to want to install that in general on your machine. It's more the modules that you install. So when you make your virtual environment, you can specify which version of Python that you have installed on your computer is being used. And then within there, you'll do things like you'll pip install Django and pip install whatever else you need.
I'd say the one exception to that, at least on my system, is that I have a Python 2 and a Python 3 installed. If you just type Python, it'll come up with Python 2. If you type Python 3, it'll come up with Python 3. I don't know if that's a standard install thing or if that's just something unique to the way that my system's configured. Um, but it allows, when I make a virtual environment, I can make Python 3 so that within that environment, I just need to type Python to get to it.
Yeah, mine right now has both versions installed.
Okay. But yeah, you're right, Derek, that you're not going to have like two versions of Python 7 installed, more than likely. I mean,
And the other thing is that it actually needs to go out and install the entire thing. So you don't want to have it make a whole bunch of different installs of Python. It's too large.
Right.
I know Jay was complaining about some module where it was large and it took like 15 minutes for it to pip install. And so he was wondering if there was a way that he could pull it from his machine and install it in his virtual environment. And I don't know if he ever got an answer to that.
That's an interesting point that I've been trying to figure out. I think I know how it works, but I'm not sure. So, like, if you install a module and then you virtual environment, that module to that virtual environment, is it going to copy it from your machine, or is it going to go out and go pull a new version of it?
I believe it goes and pulls a new version of it.
Pulls a new version.
It does pull a new version? Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have it in the virtual environment, it'll say that you're missing that module, even though it may be installed on your machine someplace else.
Okay. That's good to know.
You the other thing that the people at my job just kind of threw on me today, they said that, they want me to learn how to incorporate MongoDB into Django, which to me, like, I've used MongoDB before, but with Node and Express and JS. So that was a little strange because, that if you guys are familiar or aren't familiar with that, it uses a lot of kind of JSON-like. I guess that's how their setup is for their database. So.
There is a package specifically for that.
So is a package like a Ruby gem? In this case, I guess you guys call them plugins?
Yeah. And it's called PyMongo.
Okay.
And so all you're going to need to do from your computer is pip install it. So pip install PyMongo. It'll go out, pull it from the server. That page just gives you all the information about it. And it'll install it, and then you'll be able to use it. So that page will tell you where the module's homepage is, so you can go there and read about it and figure out, find the documentation.
And I don't know if you've used pip before, but there's a few different ways of installing modules in Python, unlike Ruby where you have gems and that's kind of the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. Pip is the newest and I would say the best way to install packages, so it is probably the closest thing to gems that's out there for Python.
Okay, yeah, I did use pip, and also for MongoDB though I had to use Homebrew. That's what they use for installation.
MongoDB in and of itself isn't part of Python, so you're going to have to use whatever Mongo tells you to use to get that. This just gives you a Python interface to be able to talk to the database.
Okay. One other question. You guys, I know like Ruby, for example, has like a huge gem library, like a website with a list of all their gems. Does Python have something like that
Yep.
I can kind of refer to?
PyPI. It's that website for the link that I just sent you.
Okay, awesome. I think I've seen this website, but I didn't know that's what it was.
That is sort of the official packages that you can get. Mm-hmm. So anything that's on that site you can get through pip install. There's other stuff that you would like. There's lots of projects on GitHub that people have, just been working on their own stuff where you'd have to go to GitHub and clone it and basically work on it as your own module.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, there's two other installers. One's called like Easy Install, and the other one's Setup.py. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I know that there's a few things, like you said, Derek, that are available via alternate sources, like GitHub or one of those.
My impression is that PyPI and pip are the newest ones, and that they sort of took the best parts of the older versions and they tried to make it uniform and easy, so that you didn't have to put any thought into installing something, which is really the way I feel using pip. It's just type a quick command and it's there and done.
Yeah, I would agree. It's almost as good as Gems. Did I say that? It's as good as Gems.
Jay's not here. You can say that.
Yeah, Jay's not here tonight. One of the members of the group, he's used MongoDB before, and unfortunately, I don't know a whole lot about MongoDB. I know it's a document store. I've done work with like relational databases, but as far as document stores go, all I really know about them is you put a document or documents into them, and then you can pull them back out later. Um, so I'm
And
not all that
everything that
familiar.
that you put in there is in a JSON format. So it's like, like a hash that contains your objects and your whatever you call it, yeah. So everything looks like that, and you can, yeah, they have basic commands. If you use JavaScript, you can use Mongoose, which kind of like facilitates calling all the data.
Okay.
But I guess with Python, you wouldn't use Mongoose. You would probably use one of the packages that you guys sent me.
Jonathan, do you maybe have any more information about? You're using Rethink, right? Is that
Yeah.
like Mongo? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a NoSQL database, so yeah, it stores the information as a JSON document, which I was using it for that Twitter thing. And since Twitter data comes in JSON format, you could just like stick the whole thing in the database and then call it back out later whenever you need it. And so if you were going to use MongoDB, then you would use the PyMongo package to talk to the database, whereas when you use RethinkDB, use the Rethink package to talk to it. It just makes it a little easier to communicate with the database. I never used PyMongo per se, but I would imagine it's fairly similar.
Okay. Well,
And
maybe you can answer a quick question for me. Something I've been wondering about NoSQL databases, with either Rethink or Mongo. So, like, I know that when you're using a relational database, you put the data in, and then you can query it out with SQL or your ORM or whatever, and you'll build a query to pull back the data that you want. And so, like, if you're pulling back a single record, you probably have a primary key on that table. So you say select everything where this ID equals 55 or whatever that is. So when you want to pull a document back out of a NoSQL database document store, how do you know which document to pull? Is there a unique ID that's attached to it, or is there some other way that you would do it?
Um, in Rethink, when you store a document, usually depending on how you do it, if you did it from the Python interpreter, you get a message that pops up that does have an ID for that very specific document. But when you do it the way I do it in the code, and you're just throwing like hundreds of documents in there, they don't come back with all those IDs. So they do have IDs, and I think there is a line to get the IDs, but usually you could pull a specific document out just by using whatever was in the document. So if you had documents that were all about different kinds of cars and you wanted all the Ferraris, then you would just search for all the documents that have the word Ferrari in it and pull them out.
Okay, so you can search for like data elements within the JSON.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
The real benefit to NoSQL versus SQL is that you don't need all your data to be organized in exactly the same way and fit into tables. It can be just whatever data they happen to send you that fits into this object, because JSON's so flexible and so you can just query based off of that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of my General Assembly, that's the boot camp I went to. One of my teachers there, he said that for NoSQL or MongoDB at least, it's like the data is already existent, even though you haven't added anything to the database. So it just assumes that a lot of data already exists there, and then you just like feed in the data. Well, versus something like Postgres, which is an SQL, it starts with 0, and then you just add something to the chart. So I don't really know exactly what that means, but that's what he said.
In a SQL database, you need to lay out the data in your table.
Yes.
So you need to put effort into deciding, how do I want to lay this out in tables? How do I want the tables to be related? How do I want to put an index on this? How do I want to put an index on that? And the NoSQL, it sort of does all that for you, because it doesn't try to cram everything into the same format.
Yeah, I think that makes sense in an interesting way, because it doesn't matter if your NoSQL data store has anything in it or not. When you put data into it, you just put your data into it and pull it back out later. Whereas, like you said, Derek, with a SQL database, you can't just say insert into this table if that table doesn't exist yet. You have to lay out your data and
Yep.
Define the database beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Now I came
Interesting.
across that you guys mentioned PyMongo, and I had found this website before for the documentation, and it says that PyMongo is a Python distribution containing tool, and I was wondering if what that really means compared to like just a gem or a plugin. I mean, is this different, or it is an actual plugin?
It
Yeah.
is. It's like a plugin. Or actually, it's like a gem. So let me look at this real quick just to make sure I'm not insane. Yeah. So you put an import statement at the top of whatever Python code you're putting in, and you say import PyMongo. And then you need to look up the API to see how to use it. But then once you've done that import and you have installed it and made it available to your project, you can then just use it like it's part of your code base, like you would with a gem or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I brought this up to one of my, I guess my senior um, coders, and he was kind of like, I guess he didn't know anything about it, but as soon as he heard that word, which is the distribution tool or whatever, he kind of was like just completely against using those, and he was like, no, just find some other type of plugin that we could use. He saw this as more like as an interpreter, but he said we shouldn't use an interpreter, so I don't really know then I guess how it would differ from a plugin, because I'm assuming that plugins would actually also help facilitate the interpretation between something like JavaScript, MongoDB, JSON files, and Python.
No, you should look at PyMongo as being a Python wrapper for the Mongo API.
Okay.
In fact, one of the guys who writes and maintains it, he works for Mongo. I've seen a number of talks that he's given where he talks about how he has to. Its job is to let Python talk to Mongo, and so yeah, this is exactly what you want to be using if you're going to be using MongoDB in a Python project.
Okay, and you said it's a wrapper to contain the MongoDB API?
Yeah, so the way that you would query and write to the Mongo database, it does that for you so that you don't have to worry about like making a connection and how do you write the queries and how do you change it from like your Python query to whatever's native JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I would say the only caveat to that is So, like, if I was working on a Mongo project, the first thing I would reach for is PyMongo, like you said, as a wrapper around Mongo. But I don't know about Django if there is a specific set of modules that are available for interfacing Mongo from Django.
Um, I don't know. I've
No.
been playing with Django for like the last week or so, and I I want to say there is, but I want to say that you would use PyMongo because it is in the documentation about how to work with PyMongo.
Okay.
So there's a few things that I guess I came across earlier. Like there's I guess a plugin called Django MongoDB Engine. I haven't really read much up on it yet, but I saved like the link. And then apparently there's also some other Mongo engine or something like that. That I'm guessing is for Django to work with MongoDB.
My guess would be that the Django MongoDB engine is probably something that was written to that's going to require PyMongo, and it's going to act. It's going to be your ORM to take your objects in Django and transform them into something appropriate for PyMongo, which is then going to transfer to something appropriate for MongoDB.
So then PyMongo being your wrapper around Mongo, and then this Django MongoDB engine kind of being your wrapper that glues Mongo to Django.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me wonder if maybe the Django MongoDB engine already has something like PyMongo built into it.
Yeah,
I would think it
that's what I
probably
was
does.
saying. I'll bet it
Okay.
does.
Okay.
Or that it uses PyMongo.
That would make sense.
Yeah. I hope that it does, so that I can tell my coworker, like, well, it's built in for a reason. Like, I just thought it was funny because he kind of freaked out when I brought it up. Now, another thing that's going to be really weird for me is, well, even though, Django and Python is like a back-end language, the way that my company is going to use or be using Django and Python is not really as a back-end. My team is actually called the front-end systems team, and apparently they have a huge or multiple databases and a lot of logic already written in Java. So they want to, I guess, create APIs so that we can pull all that information that's existent, and we're going to be kind of be acting as a middleware and sending all that information onto a front end, which is going to be built using Angular and regular HTML, CSS. So that's like the first time I've also heard of middleware. I wonder if you guys have any experience or insight with that and how that might work.
So where I work, we've had a big discussion recently meaning within the last year, about middleware. We are upgrading the front end to the service that we offer, and we aren't changing the back end. And so middleware is just any piece of code that acts as an in-between between one piece of code and another. So you could think of PyMongo as being middleware between Python and MongoDB.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you're going to be doing is you're going to be building some sort of wrapper that will call the Java code, and I don't have any idea how to do that. And you're going to be writing that in Python, and you're going to be calling that from Django.
Yeah. My guess is it's going to be like a SOAP or a REST API of some sort that you're going to somehow transform into something else. I don't really know how that would work.
Probably using the CFFI, but I have no experience with that.
They also said we're gonna be using the Django REST framework.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is kind of like I think there will be some existing APIs that we're going to be incorporating, but I think or at least I'm kind of assuming that we're actually going to be creating APIs, also using whatever data they provide.
So maybe you're building an API to an existing application, possibly, or something like that, where like you already have some sort of front end, or maybe you don't have a front end, but you already have an API, and then you're either creating whichever piece is missing. So you have a functioning application of some sort that's either a web application without an API, or an API without a web application front end, and then you're building the middleware to put that other piece in place.
Yeah, by making it a REST API, that makes it so that you can do AJAX calls from your JavaScript and Angular on the front end, and then you doing the Django REST work are going to take that request from the front end and query your engine that's written in Java and get a response from that, and then spit that back out to the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really complicated. At first I was like, oh, it's no big deal, but then they explained step by step, and I was like, wow, this is a huge project, and it's just one of the applications out of 25 they want to build.
Well, by about Project 3, you should be really good at it. By the way, I found the requirements for that MongoDB engine. It requires PyMongo.
Okay, so would I need to install it, or it already has that built in, so to speak?
When
would
you would
import
go
it.
to install the MongoDB engine,
Okay.
it would then recognize the requirements, and it would go out and get it what it needs and install it.
Okay, great. But it does actually use it pretty much. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm gonna rub that into my coworker's face tomorrow.
So your senior programmer is new to Python too?
Apparently, he's been doing it for like a couple of years. So he's also been coding for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what his background is with coding. I mean, in terms of what languages he was more familiar with, but yeah, I mean, he's still also fairly new.
Maybe Java.
If you're
No,
back,
I think he actually mentioned PHP and something else. Most likely a lamp stack.
Yeah. That makes
PHP is the classic lamp part of the lamp stack.
It's the P in lamp, isn't it?
I prefer to think of the P in lamp as being Python personally, but
So, Jonathan, you mentioned last week that show Blind Spot with that joke that they had in there, the Perl versus Python. I think you
Oh,
mentioned
yeah,
last
yeah,
week. I've had like 3 or 4 different people mention that to me in the past week about about that. Did you see that show that had that joke?
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, what? They mentioned Python? What?
Pretty funny.
Yeah.
I
So I
didn't
don't
know
know.
that Python is actually named after Monty Python.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I thought that was fun. I didn't know that until just a couple days ago.
Find a YouTube video of some talk that Guido has given at a conference and watch it, and it makes sense. He hits me as one of those people who has a sense of humor.
That's good to know.
Speaking of conferences, has anybody registered for PyCon?
Where's that going to be held?
I think it's Portland.
I think so.
That sounds right.
I did register for a conference this week, but it wasn't PyCon.
I saw that.
Is it Ruby?
Yeah, Ruby conference in my city. So I
went to Ruby Nation this past year, earlier in the year.
This is going to be my first conference, so I'm looking forward to it.
You're very expensive.
They are, but I don't have to pay for travel because it's
Okay.
here, so I figured that was a good way to get into my first one.
Yeah, I'm hoping that now that I'm working doing something code related, that they'll pay for most of the conferences I have to go to.
There you go.
Then I'll be like, let me just go to all of them.
That would be great. And I'm going to have to wear a Ruby shirt one of these days that I get there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Have a Ruby sticker on your laptop.
There you go. But I'll put it next to my Python sticker.
There you go. Yeah.
You should get one of those. God, what's it called? The mean swan or something like that. It's a saying that Mats, the creator of Ruby,
Mhm.
it means Mats is nice, so we are nice. Mean swan.
I like that.
Yeah, that's like one of their things. And I think that's why they're also very accepting, to have people into their community. I don't know about Python because I've never actually been to a conference like that, but it's actually one of the nicer people languages that I've met.
Python prides itself on being very community driven and having a friendly, open community.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the scripting languages sort of look at the C and C++ community, which is can be a little
Elitist.
condescending to new people, and they didn't want to be that, and so they've tried very hard to keep that openness in the community.
Everyone that I've met, whether they're just learning Python or have been doing Python for a while, has been really friendly.
There is a Python mailing list for mentorship. If you're just learning about Python, and you can ask questions and get answers and things like that if you want to help contribute to the language. And I think last week people were asking questions, like new people, like how do I get started and stuff like that. And Guido was actually responding to people last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just like telling them like he was at the point they were when he was writing it, so he understands. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good to know that he's not above, doing things like that.
One thing I found interesting about the Python community too is that you'll find people who aren't necessarily programmers that get into Python because Python is becoming pretty heavily used in a variety of areas. So, like in the scientific community or in the data analysis community, or these kind of areas that are technical, but they're not really programmy type areas. I don't know if that makes sense. But so they're not necessarily people who come from having a computer science degree or even never meant to get into programming, but they've kind of got into it and then they really specialize in whatever area of Python that is related to their primary field. And so you get some interesting work that's done in those areas and some interesting kind of views of programming and the language from those areas.
Yeah. I know, like in my area, when I go to a lot of the meetups, there's usually a lot of data scientists and journalists, and they're all doing like data crunching. So like, there's always somebody like trying to figure out, okay, how can I crunch this data? And Python is the best way to do it. So that's how they got into it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the classes I've seen now, I think they do kind of market Python that way, like towards data science type things.
Well, I think that you run into that if you're pitching Python as a web technology, there's a lot of competition from Ruby and PHP, and probably even some Perl still. I don't think that really exists for the data science community. I think it's either you're going to do it in Python or you need to learn something like R, which is heavily statistics based, and it's going to assume that you know all the math behind what it's doing. And so Python is, if you need to do it and you've got a general idea, the data science, and you've got a general idea of what you want to do, but you don't necessarily know how to do it, Python sort of fits that niche, and there's nothing else there.
Another thing that I think I'm gonna have to teach myself really how to do really well is a lot of testing in Python because I'm pretty sure as the middleware, if anything breaks in the application, most likely they're gonna be looking at us saying like, what did you guys do? Why is the API not working properly or whatever? And I'm sure we're gonna have to have a lot of tests. So if like what kind of sites or maybe just advice that you guys have on just testing overall with Python or Django?
So
Come on, Jamal, you got to take this one.
I've been a testing person. So as far as just basic testing in Python goes, there's a couple frameworks out there. There's one that's built into Python that's called Unit Test, and it is kind of your straight up kind of mini test would be in Ruby, where you build your test classes and you have your test cases within those classes, and then you run it within the framework, and it gives you your output. And it's really useful, and it's available everywhere because it's built into the language. There's also another pretty prevalent one that I try to use that's called PyTest. That's a little bit it's a little bit friendlier. I think it's an external module, so you have to install it with pip.
Okay.
But the way that it works, I like the output. I don't know, give them both a try and see which one you like, or maybe your workplace has a preference for one or the other, but they're probably using one of those two. There's a third one that's called Nose. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like a wrapper around unit test, so it gives some additional features to unit test. So they be kind of primary testing frameworks. Now, when you get into Django, there's some extra stuff that, so like they're going to have some Django frameworks that are built up for testing, and I have to recommend, there's a book that it was published by O'Reilly, but it's since become available in the public domain, so you can get it for free. It's called Test-Driven Development with Python, or Test-Driven Web Development with Python, I think, but the URL is obeythetestinggoat.com.
Okay.
And it's a really good book, written by, I think Harry Percival is his name.
Oh, that's why Jonathan said the goat.
Yep. Exactly.
I was like, what kind of inside joke is this?
Yeah, the inside joke is that kind of early on I was really pushing testing and obey the testing goat. So there was the team testing goat that kind of sprung up, and then someone else in the group was promoting typing speed, so they became team typing cat. So it kind of became almost a pseudo competition between team testing goat and team typing cat. Jay may come back here soon and promote Team Typing Cat, but for now I'm going to promote Team Testing Goat.
Okay, cool.
Jocelyn, I posted a link to a blog, and that's one of the guys on the Mongo team in charge of PyMongo, I believe.
Okay.
And he has done a series of blog articles recently about something that he's written for testing the whole stream, and how do you test your connection to the database and mock that up so that you don't actually need a database to run the tests. So you should take a look there and read those.
That's really useful.
Thank you. That looks like a nice blog.
Jay, you showed up. Did you know we were talking about you?
Did you hear Team Typing Cat?
I could smell typers, so.
Good. He was like, I gotta talk about the cat.
Oh man, how's it going, guys?
Hey, doing good. Good to see you.
So, I'm terribly sorry for my absence. This is what happens when you work a full-time job. Try to start out. You got a beard. Holy cow! What happened? I've been gone that long.
Yeah, it's been like a month.
Jeez. Anyway, this is what happens when you try to do a weblog, manage your own programming projects, and then like join a startup and work a full-time job. So.
What am I looking at?
A drawer.
My ceiling? Yeah. Probably my ceiling.
A cabinet.
A cabinet.
Yeah,
I'm
your
cooking
cabinet.
dinner.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and I'm also cooking dinner, so.
Wow, very multitask oriented.
Yeah, I wanted to at least come in and say hi and observe. You guys make sure you guys sit in for the Saturday discussion this week. It's going to be amazing. We're completely like revamping the whole format of it. It's going to be cool.
What
Hey, tell
time
us
does
about
it start?
It is going to start at. Are you East Coast, West Coast?
East Coast.
East Coast. It's going to start at noon East Coast.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we're not doing the live panel anymore, so it's just going to be kind of a one-on-one, or I guess a one-on-two, since I have a partner in it. But it will actually be going over ShowNoter. For those that don't know, is the application that I built for Code Newbie, and we'll even be doing a little bit of updating to it and making it better live.
What? So you're going to be interviewed?
I'm going to be a future, well, I guess a host. But we thought in order to become more comfortable with the hosts, why not interview the host? So
Like a player coach type of situation.
exactly. Yeah. I'm MJing it right now.
So is ShowNoter up and running?
No, it's still the same alpha that was there before. However, I've added a lot of features to like secret betas that I have. I'm actually on beta 3, but I haven't released any of the other ones.
Did you say
So-
secret beta?
Yeah, it's a secret beta. It's not even private. It's secret. So some of the features that I have added, I think the last time we talked, I had the import-export feature, so you could actually upload a file instead of copying and pasting. You could also export that file, export the return markdown into a text file. And I am now working on database storage so that you can go back and retrieve your workflow or your show notes at any given time. So, and then we'll just have one more big step before I do like a big release and try to get people to say, "Hey, I'll give you money for that." But there will actually be like an account model. Don't worry, all you guys are going to get hooked up for free because you guys are awesome. It's going to be like enter the secret code. Python is so much better than Ruby. And then if you put that in, you get access to ShowNoter for free for its entire existence.
That's funny. Well, good thing I joined the community then. I get free access.
Exactly. But yeah, no, you guys go right ahead. I'm just here to listen.
Okay. Cool. Hey, Mandaris joined in too. How's it going? Oh, I think you might be muted. Or
He just unmuted.
maybe you have a mic issue. I've had plenty of those. Just ask Jay.
You have a verb.
I have a
Like-
verb?
Yes, the phrase to Jamal means to start saying something prophetic, only to have your mic mute or act up at that exact moment. I need to
Yeah.
submit that to like Urban Dictionary.
So I guess it's become a verb. Maybe you're experiencing the same syndrome as I do. I don't know what it is, but my mic goes out on me at opportune moments. So hopefully that's not the case, but glad to have you here. And, Obey the Testing Goat. We were talking about that real quick. So just a quick overview of that book. It takes you from zero to a Django application that is in production with full test suite, Git, and some other stuff mixed in there along the way. And you can work through it kind of step by step and make sure that it's all working with your tests. So it's pretty cool. I like it. That's my little plug for it.
The podcast that you're getting everybody into, the Test Python.
Yeah.
I know he said that he was gonna he was doing it weekly, and then he moved it to I think he's gonna say twice a month now. He was doing a contest, unbeknownst to me. I don't even remember signing up for it. For his testing Python ebook,
Oh,
and apparently I won. So
you did?
Nice.
Oh yeah, I got that for free too.
yeah, so I heard him mention my name in a podcast, and I'm like, oh hey, I'm that Jay he's talking about.
I think you had to follow him on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Was that what it was?
Yeah, you had to retweet him or something, but I have 10,000 retweets a day, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say
no problem there.
you just spam retweets, so. But yes, so I think if you get with either myself, I haven't even downloaded it yet. It's still sitting in my messages in Twitter. I should probably do that before he pulls it.
Oh yeah, I emailed it to myself so I could always have the download link.
Exactly. So yeah, I would definitely say if you're interested in that, by all means get with either me or Jonathan, and I'll be more than happy to get it to you.
Awesome.
Get you a copy.
Yeah, I would be interested in checking that out.
I would only ask that you definitely support him. I mean, we got it for free. I would at least like to donate him a buck or two, because I mean, we're all developers. I'll do this as a hobby, so I don't want to steal from him.
No, I don't either. But I'm interested in checking it out, and I'd be happy to buy a copy the one's available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. There's so it's pythontesting.net is the URL for that.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to go check it out. And Majoris, the book I was talking about was obeythetestinggoat.com.
Where's the cat testing or whatever you guys were mentioning?
Yeah, tell us about Team Typing Cat, Jay.
Okay, so Team Typing Cat is actually a supporter of Team Testing Goat. I've been trying. I'm so bad at it. The joke is that I type too fast to concern myself with things like testing. And I don't mean that literally. I mean that as in most of the time I wind up fumbling through my tests because I'm thinking too far ahead, and I just happen to be a fast typer. So if you want to test your typing speed, you can go to thetypingcat.com and see if you qualify to be a member of Team Typing Cat.
I didn't qualify.
Jamal absolutely did not qualify, and we do have an all-star in Team Typing Cat, and I don't think he's in here. I haven't heard from him in a while. With Jeremy.
Yep.
Oh yeah, what was it, 97 words a minute?
No, Jeremy. I was typing at 89. I think my best is 89. Jeremy was typing at 110.
Wow.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's so easy." I'm just like, "Shut up! No one likes you."
So what are the words per minute requirement to get into the type?
So I would say if you can break 70 words per minute, then you're good.
Yeah, I was around 50 and I didn't qualify.
I think I could get in, you guys.
Oh yeah, I was 55. Wow.
Yeah, I usually hang around between 76 and 85.
Oh, that's pretty good. And this is typing up code or just regular typing?
No, this is just typing. Oh no, there's no way. I mean, I could probably try to type code at 90 words per minute, but it'd be bad code.
Yeah. There'd be a lot of typos in there, and a word processor is far more forgiving of typos than your IDE is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Vim kind of likes typos. It's all about typos. It'll start changing text on me.
I just
Really?
tried it. I just tried it. I'm at 70.
Hey.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I think the coolest thing that I've ever done with Vim is I have the little Python attachment that you can actually use to I think it's called PyFlake or Flake 8, and you can actually like reference other functions that you've called, or if you actually save your document, you can actually go in between Python functions and just hit tab and tab complete. And it's so amazing, and it even does some basic Python functions as well. So you don't actually have to call them. You could just do like you start typing print, do PR, and then tab. It'll automatically go print. It's so nice to have. However, it does get itself confused, especially if you use functions that are spelled similarly. And the biggest headache is if you do from module import, some function or for some method, it automatically includes the import part. So I find myself typing import after it has already put in import, and then I get syntax errors that you cannot import.
You need to define a module called import just to correct that issue.
Well, I think what I should do is when I do that, it should like print, you tried to import, you idiot, and then just leave it at that.
You should be able to write that up in Vim script.
Yeah, no problem.
Wow. I think someone had posted a while back some Vim script add-ons that you can add for Python. I don't know if it was that one, Jay, or if someone else had posted that. I meant to look at it, and I never installed it. But
I've been wanting to look at a linter, and I'm not quite sure exactly. Can someone kind of go into detail about linters, kind of like what they are, how you set them up?
In general, linters are static code analysis. The idea is that it will go through and it'll analyze your code and trying to decide if there's mistakes in it or not. The original lint was actually designed for JavaScript, and then it's sort of been taken from there and expanded to other languages.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that there is a linter for Python in Vim, and I also know that there is one for Sublime as well. But I think I have the one for Sublime. I just don't know how to set it up. So.
Cool. Yeah, I've played around with Pylint a little bit, but I haven't done any like browser or text editor specific linters.
No, I didn't use any text editor specific linters either. I used Pylint, and I used it on code that wasn't object oriented. It was functional Python, and I thought it was going to slap me. Yeah, it did not like that at all.
Okay.
It pointed out my gratuitous lack of comments.
Yeah.
In my code.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the current Python challenge, or the current Code Newbie challenge, which is zombies. Did anyone have a chance to work on it?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. Okay. I did work on it. I don't know if you guys want to take a look at that real quick or not. Well, I can show you what it looks like running, and then if you want to dig a little bit more into it, you're more than welcome to. Let me throw up the GitHub link here.
Do it.
Alright, so let me switch this over to screen share mode. No, not the tunnel. Okay. Oh, and I was going to throw up the... Okay. So the idea behind this, I can bring it up real quick for those of you who haven't had a chance to see it. No. I keep doing that. It drives me insane, that...
The tunnel?
The tunnel of images. Okay, so code... org. Okay, so the idea is to make a little zombie game where you have an area like this, and you've got some humans in there, and you've got some zombies. And when a zombie touches or ends a turn on a human, then that human becomes a zombie, and then the zombies will end up taking over the whole area. So I made one of those. Here you can see it do its thing. I think this one I'm doing 20 by 20 with maybe 40 humans. You can see the first zombie was down here somewhere. You've got the zombies kind of swarming around. I initially made it so that each unit, each being, would move in a random direction. And I found that either there was a bug in my code or that particular method of having them move. Oh, there we go. It stopped, meaning that they're all zombies now. But that particular, either I had a bug in my code that I didn't find, or that particular mode of having them move around randomly caused some humans to never turn into zombies, ever, no matter how long I had it run. So what I did is I made it so that they move randomly, except that if a zombie is already, after the humans have moved, if a zombie is either already occupying a space where a human is or next to a space where a human is, the zombie will go to that space. And that, as you can see, I can run it again, will cause with the zombie. So it's over here right now, and you can see the zombie plague is spreading out, and it's taken over the left-hand side. And
Do you specify the starting layout, or is that random?
it's random.
Nice.
So the only thing that's it sets is that there's a set number of humans and there's one zombie. We've got 3 humans left, and they're going into the zombies. There we go. So I mean, it was kind of fun to do. I was over in the Ruby room talking to them, and they were talking about doing some pretty intense, like, swarm. So, like, having the humans and the zombies think in unison and, like, having strategies and stuff. I haven't seen any of their code yet, but I think that would be really interesting to see something like that. My artificial intelligence, if you could call it that, is really rudimentary. It's mostly kind of pseudo-random movement. The zombies are smart enough to know when they're already next to a human.
You would be in the Ruby room.
I would. Oh, I'm gonna bring back a RubyConf T-shirt and wear it just for you, Jay.
I was gonna say, if you want to bring me a RubyConf T-shirt, I'll be happy to wear it.
Would you wear it? That would be worth it.
If you got me a RubyConf T-shirt, I promise you, you'd at least get me to wear it on both a Python Thursday and a Saturday discussion.
All right, that might
And
be
I would
worthwhile.
even promote it.
What size?
What would you do to the shirt, Jay?
Nothing. The shirt would be in its original form.
All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind. If I do find one, what size should that be?
I wear a large.
Large? Okay.
That just reminded me a little bit of like Game of Life, and I posted that link on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I've never done Game of Life. I have seen it before, and I would totally be interested in doing that. If I remember correctly, the idea is that it starts out with like a single cube or a single spot in the grid or something like that, and then there's a pattern to the kind of switching that comes out. Let me find the link that you posted. No. There it is. Oh, yeah, here's a little demonstration of it.
I've actually also, like I built one using JavaScript. Did you guys see it?
That's cool, the patterns that kind of emerge from it.
Yeah.
I've never done it, but I have heard of it before. And so what's the basic rules?
There you go. See if any live cell with fewer than 2 live neighbors dies. So cells that have 2 or 3 neighbors survive and multiply. If you have less than 2 neighbors, you die. If you have more than 3 neighbors, you die. There you go. So you got to create the logic behind that.
That sounds cool. Maybe we'll do that for an upcoming Code Newbie Challenge. I would be up for that if other folks would be.
That last link I sent for CodePen.io, that's what I had to build. It was actually like a code challenge that I did for a company, and it was in JavaScript. And I hated every minute of it.
In JavaScript.
That's why I was so glad I got a job doing either, like Python or Ruby I'd be okay with, but not so much JavaScript. So if you scroll down, like it tells you just how to start. You just click enter, and this is also randomized. So the blue are actually just random cells that are placed on the board.
Okay, I don't know if my resolution is good enough to get that whole. There you go. Enter. There we go. Oh, whoa. So it organizes based off of those rules into.
Yeah, there are definitely some other games that people have built that are really complex looking, and I guess they even named a lot of the cell formations that sometimes come up.
So that beginning pattern, that was random?
Yeah, that was all randomized. So if
We'll
you
try that again.
crash,
How do I
look
do
for
that?
any random one. Actually, and if you hit, let's say once you hit enter and you press the space bar, it'll pause it.
Okay.
And you could actually click on the board and add your own patterns if you want.
Oh, whoa! Alright, so I'll throw some on there and click enter and see what happens.
And then click enter again.
That did nothing because I probably need
They're
some
all
next
just
to each
one.
other.
Yeah, if it's one or less, so click space bar again to stop it. There you go.
Okay, so like I see some patterns in there that are like that, and alright. What happens? Oh, I cleared it because I hit space, not enter. I did the wrong key.
Okay, try to drawing a straight line across, and that actually makes some cool design.
Okay.
But I should have made it so you could just drag, just click once and drag. That would have been better.
Okay, so if I press enter.
Oh.
No. Oh, I didn't stop it. Okay, so you said straight lines?
Yeah, like a straight line. It doesn't have to go all the way across the board, but just so you get a sense of what it does when you do that.
Okay, I'll throw something else over here. Oh, there we go.
You see, some of them just stay alive, like that little bunch right there survive. Just like your human survived in your game.
That's cool. Yeah, I would be interested to try something like this on keep hitting spacebar.
Now, I wonder, Python probably also has math functions. Like this, for JavaScript, I had to use a math.floor function. Which I don't really recall exactly what it does. I had to read up on it.
So what kind of math functions did you need to use for this?
For this, it was just at math.floor, and then you just
like methods or
It was just mainly creating the rules first. So I actually used object-oriented JavaScript for this.
Mm-hmm.
So we use a lot of inheritance and prototypes.
Okay.
Kind of like having classes like in Ruby and probably Python and Django as well.
Okay.
Oh, nice. That one's surviving. I was just all watching it.
Whoa, that was pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, I would totally do that on a Code Newbie challenge. See if we can get that in an upcoming one. Wrong one. Oh.
Now the one that you made was just using the terminal, right?
Yeah, that was just using the terminal. And here's the code here.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna also see if I can, cause I'm also just learning Python, so I'm gonna try to see if I can recreate what you did.
Cool. Yeah, here's the actual verbiage of the challenge. Let's see. Here it is. I can throw that into the tunnel of doom.
You jinxed yourself.
Okay, that outlines
Okay, cool. Let me
the
see.
challenge itself. I can go through just a quick walkthrough if anyone wants to take a look at that. What I did, obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but okay, here's one. I had two modules.
Mhm.
The first one is I called it being, and it can be either a human or a zombie. And here you'll see an import statement. So this is importing two randomization functions. Rand range, which you can give it a range of values and it'll pick a random number that's between them. And then choice, which you give it a list of values and it'll pick one of them from the list. And so here's a good question. This is what I've kind of started doing because of the way that I'm doing programming. I often end up with methods and classes that don't actually do anything with the class, although it's related to the class's functionality. So, like, for instance, I have this method is next to, and basically what it does is so it's going to, if you give it like 3 and 4, it'll return true, but if you give it 5 and 9, it won't. And the reason is because 3 is quote unquote next to 4, but 5 is not quote unquote next to 9. So it has to do with the so like when you're determining if a zombie is next to a human, if the x coordinate is like 3 and the x coordinate of the next one is 4 and they have the same y coordinate, you know they're next to each other. So like for this function here, it doesn't have anything to do with being directly. It doesn't refer to any of the properties of the being class. So I moved it out into its own function. Does anyone else run into a situation like this? And if so, how do you handle it?
There is actually a Pythonic way to do it, and I've seen it, and I think I've used it at one point, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, so I'm looking for it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I mean, this makes sense to me, but like you said, it very definitely could be something that's not the Python way to do it. But yeah, I have two of those functions up here. This one is next to, the other one is change loc or change location. So basically, this is the logic behind the random movement, and it's just in one axis. So you pass it the current location, which is going to be 1 to whatever your max location is, or 0 to whatever your max location is, and it'll find one that is adjacent to that. So if you had 5, it will give you either 6 or 4. Or if you had 9 and your max room size was 9, it could only give you 8. And it'll give you a random. So if there's 2 options, it'll give you a random one of those. If there's only 1 option, it will return that option. Then there's the being object here, which there's 4 basic properties. There's the identity. When it's an H, it's a human. When it's a Z, it's a zombie. Max location, so it's storing some of the information about the grid in the being to be able to facilitate it. I don't know if it really belongs in there, but that was kind of how I did it. So the being knows where the walls are, essentially, of your grid. It's always going to be 0 on one side, but you can change the far end, so it could be a 10 by 10 grid or a 15 by 15 grid or whatever. And I made it so that it's always going to be a square, just to save my own sanity. And I initiate the class with the coordinates of -1, -1, and there is a locate method that will randomly place it somewhere on the grid between 0 and the max location. And then there's a couple accessors. I found this accessor thing, which is kind of neat. I don't know if anyone's used the accessor and the associated decorator in Python.
The property decorator? I've used that before. Yeah,
Okay.
that's neat.
So it's kind of like, I don't know if anyone's had experience. Probably seen it in Ruby with your accessors there, but you can see it more. My guess is in like C++, Java, languages like that, where your actual attributes are going to be private, but you can control access to them. So if you want to allow them to be readable from the outside world, you can do that, and that's essentially what this is doing. These are read-only attributes. So you can read what the x and y coordinates and the maximum location are, but from outside the class you can't, or the object once it's instantiated, you can't modify it from the outside directly.
So, Jamal, I found that thing that I was thinking about. It's called a class method.
Okay.
And so it's something that's related to the class, and you want it to be tied to it.
No,
But
that
you
makes
don't-
sense.
But you don't necessarily want it to be specific to any particular instance.
Mhm.
So I put a link in the chat. But
I won't go to
basically
it
what
right
you
now, but I'll check
basically
it.
what you do is you add another decorator to it,
Mhm.
and then you would call it either as from the class. So in your case, it would be being dot is next to.
Okay.
Or you can do it with, if you have a particular instance, you can call it off of that.
Okay, so from the instance, you can call it just like it's an instance method, only it won't have access to any of your instance values, more than likely, like
Yeah,
self.
you don't pass self in.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Thank you. I will start using that. Okay, so there's a couple other methods on here. Reveal, just it's a way of saying, am I a human or am I a zombie? Zombify, which turns it from a human into a zombie. Move, which it moves it. So, and that's going to be using your change location function that I showed you up above. Basically, it's not going to move in the x and the y axis in one turn. It's only going to do one or the other. Move toward, which is something I added later. So that's the ability for a zombie to identify that there is a close by target, and then move towards it. So that kind of encapsulates the movement. This module encapsulates the movement and the whole zombies and humans piece.
Are you using Python 2 or 3 on this?
This is Python 3. It looks a lot like, so for this, it would probably run just fine in Python 2, except for the parens around the print statement.
You might have issues with the classes. So originally, the new style classes in Python 2 inherited from object, and you had to be explicit about that. In Python 3, that is everything is the new style class. So the way you've defined it being, if this was run in Python 2, being would be an old style class.
Okay. What would that mean?
That means that it wouldn't have access to, it wouldn't necessarily have access to all of the dunder methods.
Okay.
I don't know any of the details. I haven't looked into it. I just know that inheriting from object gives you access to a number of things that we just expect. We being people who have learned on Python 3 just expect to have available to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll keep that in mind. Oh, and here's my line that violates PEP 8 right here, just in case anyone was looking for that.
Oh, that's awful.
Isn't it bad?
Oh yeah, it's super long.
I know.
Oh,
It's horrible.
That's all right. I think every single script I ever wrote violated PEP 8. So,
Yeah, that, and I don't have the comments at the beginning of all my methods, and I don't have a module comment and stuff. So
and
it could be cleaned up.
yeah, no doc strings. Look at this.
Yeah, I know. I know. All right, so this is kind of the glue that holds all the different beings together. This is I called it alert. Basically, this is triggered. So there's one more piece to this puzzle that's out here. It's the run, and all it does is it imports this alert module and calls start. So this is the kind of the entry point into the code.
what do you have in setup.py?
I've got nothing.
Oh, okay.
Or no, well, actually I do. It's to get it to be able to install via pip as editable, so that I can use PyTest.
Oh yeah.
So this allows me to go out to here and say, let's see, sudo pip install -e this directory, and then it'll install it as an editable and allow me to run PyTest without having the dundernet.py file in my test directory.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me,
maybe.
but I found it on the PyTest documentation.
Yeah, I didn't understand why that had to be done, but I was like, all right. Writing the setup.py isn't that hard, so.
Yeah, and it could have a lot of stuff in there, but it's just enough to get it to install via pip.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. Okay, so go back to that alert. So this is the glue that kind of holds it together. Again, I don't claim this is beautiful code, but it works. So just real quick, this is some initialization here. So there's a max chord setting that's set up at the beginning, and it's currently set to 25, so it's gonna create a 25 by 25 grid, and then it's gonna populate with 25 humans. It's gonna add a zombie, which is a being that has the zombify method called on it, and then I create this loop that all of those beings go into this beings list. So then I created a has humans method, I think. Actually, that would be a function because it's outside here. There it is. So basically, it just looks for any humans in that array. So while there are humans left, it's going to just loop this, and it separates them into zombies and humans. It moves the humans, and then it has the zombies attack, but essentially that is a move with the added ability to sense a human that's next to you and move towards it. And then once both the humans and the zombies have moved, it loops through the zombies and separates out the victims as humans that are at the same locations as the zombies, and it zombifies them. Then it displays them, and it waits for 1/10 of a second and loops. So that's the basic code. Probably the other piece to look at here is just display beings. All that's doing is just going over the grid for each location starting at 0, 0, and it's going to print out what you see here.
So if you scroll up there over in your prompt, we're going to see another screen just like that.
Yeah, it just...
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of cheated. So I made it 25 by 25 so that you can, when you run it, it looks like it's actually animated, but it's just printing out something over and over again that takes up the whole screen.
It's ingenious, if nothing else.
It's kind of like the I don't know if you ever took the little like a book or a bunch of pieces of paper and you make a little flip book that you could make a little
Yeah.
animation of itself. It's kind of like that. It's not actually doing any sort of animation. It's just printing it out over and over again.
Honestly, everything that, that's generated that we watch is done the exact same way.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how fast it runs.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually. So that was my solution to the zombie alerts challenge. I mean, we got a week left. I'd love to see some more. Obviously, I didn't do it. There's some code in here that's pretty ugly, I think. So it could be done better or in a different way.
Are you going to try and clean it up next week, or?
Yeah, if I get a chance, I'll clean it up. I never did the Ante Up challenge all the way through, so maybe I'll do that instead. I'm not sure. One or the other. But that did bring me to, I think I mentioned earlier, I would like to add a code reading portion to Python Thursday on days that we have the chance. I mean, we just kind of did a brief like one right now, but it doesn't have to be code that any of us have written. But if folks have some code, a pretty small chunk of code, maybe 100 lines or something from a project, or it could be your own, or it could be an open source project that's out there. There's lots of projects out there on GitHub to choose from. I would be interested in going through that, taking a little time each Thursday and looking through different people's code. I think there was a link that I had for this, actually, if I remember correctly.
Having watched Saran's talk where she discussed that, I think not using someone else's code, not using one of our code, would probably be a good idea.
I think that makes sense. Definitely.
The tunnel.
All right, so there's that. We're going to get a couple links here, so you're going to have to
Why
abide.
does it do that? What does it create, like a tunnel?
Here, let me I'll stop presenting, and then it'll stop.
A double tunnel.
There you go. Now you can see me. No. What did I do? There we go. So it's showing my desktop with my desktop on it. It's kind of like when you get two mirrors facing each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's awful. I hate it.
See, I get that there would be two reflections, but I don't know why there would be like so many. Oh, I guess because it keeps reflecting back and forth between each picture, I guess. Oh,
In this case, because Jamal's displaying his desktop, within his browser is a picture of his desktop. And so now that contains a picture of his browser, which contains a picture of his desktop. And it just keeps going like this.
Just a whole bunch of virtual environments.
There you go.
So do you guys ever, or have you already like gone over maybe like a Django type project, or just use any other framework for Python and created a project like that?
We tried doing a Django blog, and it didn't seem to work well with our setup. It didn't seem to get to the point where the work was distributed enough where we could have lots of people working on it, and there were people who it also wasn't necessarily didn't work well for inviting new people to join in and help us.
Right, because you had to have a background. I think also that Django, it's almost like its own language. It has a lot of stuff that's unique to Django.
Yeah.
So it's great, and if people have stuff about Django and they want to learn about it and bring it in and present it, I would love to learn more about it. But at least from that project, it didn't work out the best. but
Yeah.
I'm open to stuff.
On that project, some people took it as like a just a regular blog, and Django, you can't really do it as a regular blog
Hmm.
because the way that the blog is now, the it's a beautiful blog. I mean, it's a beautiful page, but it's just not Django. It's something completely different, but it's it's like part Django, part JavaScript blog. With it's beautiful, but it's just not a Django type project.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know, like with Rails, I think instead of usually teaching Ruby first to people who are brand new beginners, they usually teach them Rails first. But I agree that it's similar to Django and Python, where Django has its own, I guess, set of rules and even its own language, so to speak, that you need to learn. And it's not like learning just a language from scratch, like with Python, for example. You don't start, writing with variables and strings and whatever. You just kind of like jump right in and try to figure things out that way.
Yeah, I think it can be really great to get something up and running and show someone, say, this is what you can do when you're using this language or this framework.
There's definitely a lot of tutorials, and another one I wanted to do, like the first one I actually did was from the DjangoProject.com,
Mhm.
That's
and
the best one.
yeah, that project, it seemed like it was more for a like intermediate user because I had never used Python at all before, and it just didn't make that much sense. And I think some places it was just hard for me to really understand what they were trying to say, especially once I got to the part where they discussed testing. That's where I kind of got stuck because it doesn't tell you, everything you need in order to set up for the tests. It just like kind of mentions a few things here and there, and then just kind of assumes you would know how to set up the test.
Yeah. Well, if there are people who are interested in learning about Django, maybe on a project or something, and then kind of bringing it back and showing people kind of what they did and saying, hey, here's how we put this together. Here's the code. Let's take a look at it. I would be interested in seeing that if that's something folks are interested in. It just,
The
I'm
next
not
one,
sure it works as a main focus. I don't know if that makes sense, but I,
It didn't work for us.
yeah, it didn't
And I
work when we
say
tried
this
it before.
And I say this being the person who pushed to do a Django app as our group project, and it just didn't work for us.
yeah, it's very different than just the language itself. It actually seems like Django, and just like Rails, I mean, it has so many things built into it, including so many plugins or gems, and it's just can't really learn it thoroughly. Like you just be jumping in. You'd probably be able to build an application just by following directions, but you won't really understand how you built it.
Hmm.
Right.
And the other thing is that if you're doing something like that, you've got a lot going on. You've got all the front end work, the HTML and the CSS, and probably the JavaScript that really isn't the focus of what we're trying to do.
That's true.
Yeah.
I
Speaking,
am. Oh, I'm
go
still
ahead.
trying to work on a project that we had as a one of our coding challenges from a number of months ago now, where we were trying to create Mad Libs, and I decided I wanted to do it as a Django app. And I've spent a lot more time messing around with the CSS and the JavaScript, which I knew nothing about. And it's still something where I still see it as I can do this, but it's taking a lot of time because there's a lot of learning in there, and it isn't Python that I'm really struggling with.
Hmm.
Yeah, I ran into that same problem with the Flask app that I built, needing JavaScript here and there. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But
Speaking of that app, Jonathan, give us an update on that.
It's not bad. It's not on any server or anything like that, just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. But I was doing a little bit more reading today about different things, just to see what other results I could give the user.
Mhm.
So instead of what I just showed you, instead of number of users and original tweets and retweets and most favorited and most retweeted,
Do you have
maybe
a shot? I don't know. I
huh?
think you posted it up to the Slack channel before, but
Yeah.
you made a Twitter analyzer, like a tweet stream analyzer.
Yeah, tweet stream analyzer. So you could use it
Yeah.
for analyzing Twitter chats that are happening like at that moment, and then you get the results after the chat is over. But you have to set it for a specific amount of time. So if you were doing the Code Newbie Twitter chat on Wednesday night, you would set it for 3,600 seconds, which is 1 hour. And after that time passes, the result page automatically pops up with the results of the analysis. But I was looking to add in features like maybe a graph showing how many users are from what area, and maybe a graph of the retweets of each user. So, like, who retweeted what or how many retweets from each person's tweet. I think the locations one might be easier to do.
Okay. I'm trying to find the picture you posted up to the Slack channel of your output. I thought that looked really cool. I just can't find it.
It's a ways back. There, I just posted it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
For some reason, there were a whole bunch of GIFs there that were sort of taking less.
Yeah, but the project, I like the project. You learn a lot, I think, when you try and build out a web app, whether you're using Django or Flask.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's worthwhile and it's very useful.
Yeah.
So if folks have projects they're working on with that, I'd love to see them come in and kind of show them off and say, hey, this is how it all worked and this is the result. So
I kind of see full stack as being like, okay, you have to be like a jack of all trades, but you're not going to be an expert at any of these things. You're just going to know how to use a little bit of everything, just
Yeah.
so you can make it work or have an end product. But unfortunately, it's not going to make you an expert at any of these unless you're really focusing on the foundations of it. Whether it be JavaScript overall, or Ruby, or Django. I mean Python, I should say. Not even just the frameworks, but the language itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
yeah, I would agree.
I've lucked out that I work with someone who his entire job is to run our company's website, and so he is very familiar with JavaScript and all the front-end stuff that I know nothing about. So he's been nice enough to help me when I have a question and sort of give me a way to learn it. Because not only do you need to understand with JavaScript how to do the programming language side of it, how to flow control and functions and stuff like that. And JavaScript is its own beast there. It has a whole bunch of strange constructs. But you also need to understand how to interact with what's being displayed in the browser. And so that creates a whole nother level of how do you do that.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to extract JavaScript from like the DOM and kind of that aspect of JavaScript.
Yeah.
There was it just reminded me, I usually use Twitter. I started using Twitter mostly to just tweet about coding things. I saw a lot of articles. But I came across this one article that I thought was really good or the title is Teach Yourself Programming in 10 Years.
I like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I read that at one point.
And then I thought it was actually different than, how a lot of blogs and schools and things nowadays, like the web development boot camps, for example. They're going to teach you how to code or become a full stack developer in a really short span amount of time. And everyone wants to learn Python in 24 hours, or I've seen those books too, or like learn Java in 24 hours. I mean, that's pretty much impossible. You can learn some basics, but you're not going to learn the entirety of the language.
Right.
There is a talk on YouTube, and I don't remember which one, but the guy who gives it, who's doing the speaking, is Raymond Hettinger, who is one of the top Python core developers. And he makes the argument that if you want a proficient, good C++ programmer, it will take it as an employer. You're going to hire someone, and it'll be probably 3 years before they're really a top-notch programmer.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have a top-notch Python programmer, take your programmers that you've already got. They'll be more or less proficient in 24 to 48 hours, and if they're really doing it a lot, they should be really good in a couple of weeks to a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's so he pushes his clients, where he's a consultant, to switch over to Python and just take the developers you've got and switch them over to this new language.
Mm-hmm.
The language is easy enough to learn, and you don't have these weird, wonky edge cases, and you can have a good Python team in a very short time.
An argument for
He's also like one of the creators of Python, or he just works with Python?
He is one. Guido is the creator.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of people who work on the actual Python, CPython release, the environment, and all of the core libraries. He's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Really good talks, and really seems to know the ins and outs of the language.
Okay. Because I was going to say, if I was a person who created the language, I would definitely, advertise it to market it to everyone and say, yes, your developers will learn this in 2 weeks. But I agree that the language in itself is so much easier than even JavaScript. Like I said, it's just syntax is honestly, like, just something like JavaScript is an eyesore to me because it's not even clean to look at.
Yeah, what's actually built into the language, when I compare Python to C, Python has so much more that you can do, and there's so much there in the language. And yet, I've been programming Python for, what did we decide, 4, 5, 6 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm just as good at Python as I am at C at this point.
Oh, nice.
Because you don't make the mistakes in Python.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it easy to do things.
Would you? Hello?
Hey.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Good to be here. Would you say that the amount of time that you took doing C has, could be attributed to the way that you were able to pick up Python? Like you already have an idea of how, the structures work, or loops, and just basic logic of like, okay, if I want to do something, these are the steps I would, in order to get my solution, and then from there you just use the syntax.
That has some of it, but Python has different control structures. So, like, in C, if I want to do a for loop, it's going to look vastly different from what a loop would look like in Python. And so it's trying to do the same thing, but it's being done in a vastly different way. And in C, you need to worry a lot about memory management, which is difficult to do. Mm-hmm. And you don't do that in Python. Python does it for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that I mean there definitely is a value to learning multiple languages, but Python is a really good. It's just a really good, solid all-around language.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's all that I had tonight. Great to see new folks here, and I think we had a great discussion tonight. I'm really happy with that. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to mention before we wrap it up for this week?
Yeah. I promised to explain about the data science in, or I'm sorry, no, machine learning in Python.
Oh, yeah. Please,
Oh
go
yeah,
ahead.
I almost forgot.
I found a podcast called The Changelog, and what they do is they look at what's new and interesting on GitHub and basically talk about what's happening in open source.
Oh, cool.
And they have mailing lists that go along with that. And I was reading through last night's nightly mailing list, and that happened to be on there. So I just stumbled across it and knew that it was something you guys were interested in, and that's why I posted it. I'm not trying to steer you away from Clojure because I want to learn that too.
No, I was reading some of what you posted. It was I think it allows you to understand machine learning and all that stuff a whole lot easier. Breaks it down to the simple stuff.
So, in a nutshell, what is machine learning? What can it do for you?
So, pretty much what machine learning does is, the way they were explaining it is, if you wanted to get code that could tell the difference between a house in New York and a house in San Francisco, you would feed it this. You would have data sets. You would have the one that you use to train the code, and then the one that you use to test it. And you feed it in, and you got to tell it. You tell the code when to split like the groups up almost. So when you see that there are more houses that are higher up in elevation in San Francisco, then all right, if it's above 400 feet, then the house must be in San Francisco, and if it's below 400 feet, it must be in New York.
So to totally oversimplify it, you
Yeah.
basically say you feed it a bunch of data and say this is a house in New York, and then you
Yeah.
feed it another set of data and do something.
Yeah.
And then you could give it a house and say, is this in New York or San Francisco? And it would look at whatever it had learned and be able to tell you which is which.
Yeah, they pretty much said they said it uses like if-then statements. So if it's this, then do this. And then they started going into recursion. So you would go through your code again, but give a different filter almost. And you just keep giving it a bunch of filters until it kind of got it close to 100%, but you don't want to overdo it because then you'll never get correct answers when you run it in real life because you focused on stuff that wasn't important, which is why you need the training data and then the test data to make sure they both should be similar.
So then potentially you could use it. Say there was something you wanted to find, you wanted to do research on something, and you could train your code to look for some specific set of text or data, and then set it loose on the internet to go look for that stuff. Potentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's cool.
Yeah, you could have your machine learning app and just have it sitting on your server and randomly gathering data from across the internet.
Or maybe some kind of data mining, like you're looking for a ginormous data set of some kind, and you're looking for not something specific, like, this happened on this day, versus like, close this pattern, learn more about it, and go find it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
The hard part is coming up with the algorithms that you program in to get the computer to decide what is important and what's not, and how it builds its understanding of things.
Mhm.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
It's hard enough when I know exactly what I'm looking for, but if I have to tell it to figure out what it's looking for, that sounds difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the paragraphs said have really big data sets and really stupid code, and just make sure your program runs first and does like something close to what you wanted it to do, and then just go from there. Don't worry about trying to reinvent the wheel, I think they said.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that with the group.
No problem.
Cool. All right. Anyone have anything else they wanted to talk about before we wrap it up? Awesome. Well, I think this is a great week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, did you have something to say?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great here. I look forward to seeing you next week. Keep on with the Python. That sounded super cheesy. It didn't sound quite as cheesy in my head.
That's off the senior quote unquote developer. I'm messing.
Oh, cool. You posted the link.
Yeah.